Hey guys, Coach Dennis here. I'm here to talk about our first learning target of the unit, which is food groups and energy. So a lot of this will overlap with what you guys talked about last year in biology. So how energy, goes from your producer, all the way up to, primary consumer, secondary, tertiary, so on and so forth, as it moves through the food chain, food web. So talk about just basically what types of foods we have, what they're grouped into, and what the energy they have. So food groups. Food groups are a collection of food that shares similar nutritional properties. So how we designate those is we have 5 different, ways that we categorize them. So number 1, carbohydrates. So remember, that's generally where you're going to get most of your energy from. You have your vegetables, which gives you a lot of nutritional value with a low amount of calories. Same with fruits. Usually fruits are high also in water, water content. You have your milk or dairy products, and then protein. Milk, dairy, that has a lot of different proteins within them, a lot of different nutrients, and then protein. That's how most of your body functions, is using different types of proteins. So yeah, the USDA encourages people to eat all food groups. You need certain amounts of each one, depending on your needs. Ideally you're eating more fruits and vegetables and whole grains and not as much processed food, sugary things that are pumped full of preservatives and other things that aren't necessarily natural, and your body doesn't process very well because a lot of man-made additives aren't always the best for you. So yeah, generally you want to stay away from foods that have a lot of fat and sugar. You want to eat as little of that as possible. You want to have good protein. The reason why that is because not only does it build muscle, but a lot of your body functions are dependent on different proteins. So, yeah. Whereas like fat and sugar, those, if you don't use up that energy that's found in those, that's what gets stored up and, eventually all accumulates on your body in the form of fat. So food energy. So one thing to note is all energy that we have within food comes from the sun originally. So just as a little overview, if you remember in biology, you have the sunlight. The sunlight gets absorbed by your producers or your plants, and that sunlight gets converted into sugars, and then those sugars eventually get eaten by something, and then something eats it, so on and so forth. So that's how we get our energy from our food. But it all comes back to the sun. So yeah, photosynthesis, just also review, is when basically you're using solar energy. You're using solar energy along with water and carbon dioxide to produce glucose, which is our sugar. And that's what we use for energy, and also produces oxygen, which is what we breathe. So here's your general chemical reaction for it. So, let's see, pen. So, our general chemical reaction is we have carbon dioxide with water, and solar energy produces glucose and oxygen gas. And you notice this one's balanced. If you ever have to balance this one, the little shortcut for this is basically everything but your glucose molecule. In order to balance it, you need to put a coefficient of 6 in front of it. It's an easy one to remember too. And then remember, the reverse of this is also our cellular respiration. But we have our carbon dioxide, plant takes in along with water and energy, and it stores that energy within the bonds of our glucose molecule, and in that process it also produces oxygen. Good for us. So yeah, our sun's energy gets transferred through the food. So plants absorb that energy, store it within those glucose molecules, and then something eats those glucose molecules. And then eventually all that energy goes down the line. But as you go from, your producer to your primary consumer, secondary, tertiary, and then quaternary, you may get to a fifth, but usually not. But as you go up each one of those, less and less energy becomes available. Really, only about 10% of the energy is available each time you go up a tropic level. So, let's say I eat a plant with 100 calories, only about 10 of those calories are actually going to move on if something were to eat that. So 10% is the rule. So yeah, energy gets that we use, or anything that's living uses the energy within bonds, specifically glucose molecules. And how plants and animals do this, because a lot of people forget that plants still need to use the energy that they make. But plants and animals both do what's called cellular respiration, which is basically just getting the energy from those glucose molecules. Where we use oxygen, the whole reason why we need oxygen is so that we can use energy at the cellular level. Otherwise, those cells die, and then if those die, we die. But yeah, the cellular respiration reaction is the exact opposite of photosynthesis. The only difference is our form of energy. So in photosynthesis, the energy we use is solar energy, whereas the energy that we are trying to get comes in the form of calories, or officially ATP. If you guys remember that, ATP, or adenosine triphosphate. But same players in this reaction as photosynthesis, except if you notice, instead of using carbon dioxide, water, and that energy to produce glucose and oxygen, it's the other way around. We use glucose and oxygen, and we break up those bonds, and then we produce carbon dioxide, water, and then that energy from it. So what the energy is for, so energy helps carry out every reaction you have in your body. So if you have a high metabolism, that just means that the chemical reactions in your body happen more often. So that you're using more energy. Energy is needed to transport molecules from cell to cell. It's how we dispose waste within the cellular level, store genetic material, make new molecules. So you need that energy. And each one of these actions generally need to use oxygen too. So that's also why we need oxygen. So some energy, of course, is going to be used right away. And then the leftover energy, we store that as ATP, or adenosine triphosphate. And one thing you might notice is this little molecule right here. This is, your A that you find within DNA, your adenosine, or your adenine, when it attaches to a couple other molecules. But your adenine from, your A, G, C, T, it looks very similar. But we just added some phosphates on it towards the end. And that's your triphosphate. So here's your 3 phosphates and your adenosine. That's how it's broken up. So calorimetry. So this is basically the process of how we figure out how much energy is within food. So everything that you eat has to have, calorie content and just nutritional values put on them. Well, how they figure out how many calories are in something is using calorimetry. And basically, what a calorie is how much energy is required to increase a liter of water by 1 degree Celsius. So that's the official definition of a calorie. And then, you can figure out calories of anything just using simple homemade things, such as using a can, a thermometer, and whatever food you want to figure out how many calories are in it. So diet and exercise. So diet is just what are you putting into your body for food. So a diet, a lot of people think of it as always healthy. You can have a bad, unhealthy diet. Diet's just what are you putting into your body? What are you eating? Some examples of common ones that you see are like vegetarian or vegan, gluten-free or like Atkins, where you don't really have as many carbohydrates. Gluten-free, you're not going to have any grains that contain gluten within them, whereas like Atkins is just you're trying to get rid of as many carbohydrates as possible. Usually if you have high blood pressure, you're going to want to have something with low sodium. And then kosher, that follows guidelines, religious guidelines, the Jewish faith, to know if something is kosher or not. So it's how food is prepped and things like that. So you can have diet for religious reasons, personal reasons, like maybe you're vegetarian, vegan, because, you don't like the thought of killing animals. And then, or like the gluten one, maybe you're just gluten intolerant. Like me, I'm wheat sensitive, so if I have too much wheat, it can really mess with me. And then you have some newer ones, like as your Paleo Diet, where you're eating, basically hunter-gatherer type foods. You have the Keto Diet, where you're, instead of using carbohydrates as your energy source, you switch your body to using fats as your energy source, which a lot of people have success losing weight. Known quite a few. So yeah, exercise, physical activity, always good. You want to get about 30 minutes at least 3 times a week, if not more. But with this includes just better function within your body, improved health of your bones, just feeling better about yourself. It does help with depression. As somebody who lives with that, I know it definitely helps. And then just overall improved biomarkers. Physical activity does help the brain too. So like, if you're into games and stuff, want to get better at games, in order to improve your health of your brain, you got to improve the health of your body. So to have faster reactions, quicker times, working out is very beneficial. If you look at your top end streamers, a lot of them are pretty good at workout regimen, just to stay in shape and healthy, be on top of their game. So what biomarkers are? So biomarkers, basically things that you look at to see how healthy you are. So things like that can be like blood pressure, heart rate, BMI, which isn't the most accurate, looking more at fat content, but it's a little bit harder to do. BMI is really easy to compute if you have to. That's why it's used. But essentially things that are pretty safe and easy to measure, pretty consistent across, all ethnic groups, all genders, and then just easy to modify with treatment. It's a lot of things. If you ever got a physical at the doctor, a lot of those things are your biomarkers, is what they're checking. Height, weight, blood pressure, triglycerides in your blood, stuff like that. Different things that can be found within it. So like blood tests can be biomarker, and they have a lot of biomarkers in there too. So yeah, that is it for our notes. So hopefully a lot of this stuff you kind of have an idea about. Maybe something new like calorimetry might be in there. But as for this other stuff, you probably at least heard about a little bit. Maybe didn't go as in depth. But that is it for our notes, guys. I hope you have a good day and have a good rest of the year. Bye.